Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. Right, so this is going to be my top 10 Mystic champions in 2021. And this, and as I suspect all other class ranking videos, are going to be quite hard to make, because fact of the matter is the game's growing and there are more and more good champions. Like, obviously we have our fair share of bad champions, but when I started with these videos, it was quite clear, okay, so we have 3 great, couple good, and then, for the last few spots, we kind of filled in with the best of the worst. Then at this point already, there's more than 10 good, useful champions in every single class, including Mystic. Now, as a side note, I am not taking original Scarlet Witch and Magic in consideration for these videos, because only champions that are out as 6 stars are in these ranking videos. So no Magic and no Scarlet Witch OG by default. And there are definitely a ton of great, amazing champions that can easily make the list. For instance, Dr. Voodoo. Dr. Voodoo might be, slightly acquired taste for some, but I still think he's extremely capable. I think he very easily could have made it, I don't know, somewhere in 9th or 10th spot. This time around, I'm not including him though. Similarly to Morningstar. Morningstar is a great champion, wherever she is, hiding somewhere. Here we go. Morningstar, still can do a ton of things. Unfortunately, her ramp up is just so punishing that majority of the people choose not to, because why would you? And top of that, perhaps slightly controversial pick that does not make it to top 10 is Longshot this time around. I think Longshot is fine. I think Longshot has, potential to do a ton of damage, but I don't think he does anything many other Mystic champions don't do. He might do slightly more damage, but when it comes to being a Mystic champion or you deciding who you bring in, there are better reasons to bring in other champions. And I do have a 6-star Longshot. I have a rank 5-star Longshot. He's fun whenever you end up using him. It's just that I think other champions might be slightly more deserving. And then obviously there's Sasquatch, who, I know some people definitely enjoy a lot. My personal, possibly favorite Mystic, or one of the favorite Mystics for me, Man-Thing. I know he's not great, but he's absolutely awesome to play with, especially if you have Max Mystic Dispersion. Very entertaining champion. Didn't make the top 10 list. And we are going to start the top 10 now. So the spot number 10 this time around is going to go to Symbiote Supreme. Symbiote Supreme, for a while actually, I think was considered as one of the, if not the best Mystic champion in the game. And that just shows that, time goes on, things change. New champions get released, older champions get buffed. And Symbiote Supreme is still extremely capable in situations where you do need him. My personal, quarrels with Symbiote Supreme is that power gain mechanic, I think, in often cases is somewhat slow. He does have a peculiar way of, doing the fights, and I know he definitely has quite a lot of fan base. Not to mention, he's one of the best looking champions in the game. He looks awesome, and he's still very, very capable Mystic champion that I have absolutely no doubt plenty of people are still using for one reason or another. But I think his kind of like fame peaked at early Act 6, and past that point with the release of Black Widow Clairvoyant, Dr. Doom, some other champions, he was slowly being like pushed down and down and down and down to a point where I don't see him around as much anymore at all. But nonetheless, I still think extremely capable champion. If you really wish, you can, I don't know, replace Symbiote Supreme with some of the honorable mentions that I did earlier. But let's move on to spot number 9. And spot number 9 is a very peculiar Mystic champion that is hardly a Mystic champion at all. He doesn't really have many qualities of a Mystic champion. In this case, I think it kind of works as his strength. Now, first and foremost, he's like the only non-tech robot, as far as I'm aware. So he's immune to bleed and poison. And also with his level 3 rotation, he's extremely Liquid Courage double edge friendly. He has crazy good damage mitigation with him being unstoppable. He's also one of those Mystics that has very easy access to unstoppable with his level 3 spam, consistent power gain. plenty of uses offensively and defensively, and I think he's a very kind of solid character. Might not be for everybody, might not be for every fight necessarily, but definitely with all that excess power that he's gaining and access to Incinerate, access to Unblockable, and access to Unstoppable, you know, he's fairly solid. Obviously, his kind of like reason for not being anywhere higher than he is that A, his base damage output is actually quite shit unless you can corner the opponents, and B, he doesn't really buff control at all. He doesn't have any nullification in his base kit. But still, I think a very solid champion. Whenever Mystic rank ups are being considered, this champion often floats about, and for a very good reason. Because Mystic as a class, I think often is kind of limited in a very tight box. As in, like, Mystic champions are meant to do this thing and that thing. That is like buff control and perhaps power control. Or control the fight in some other fashion. And I am glad to see Mystic class in general kind of expanding away from that. And Dragon Man is a perfect example. I just wish he had a better start of the fight, better beginning, kind of like more aggressive way to enter the fight. But indication that Mystic class is getting better with champions like Dragon Man, Tigra, and, you know, Diablo, and a whole bunch of others. Spot number 9, Dragon Man. Spot number 8, a champion that's criminally underrated offensively. And I keep saying this, and a lot of people don't believe me until they start using him. It's Mojo. Now, Mojo might initially seem relatively unimpressive, but there are 2 conditions for Mojo to absolutely fascinate. Number 1 is that he does need to be awakened and relatively decent sig. That Fury matters. It's a very significant attack boost that you will be getting for majority of the fight. The sig level matters. The higher the better. There is no real sweet spot. It's just as simple as that. The higher sig, the better for Mojo. And second thing is, people forget that he's a ramp-up champion, so you bring him in for the first fight, and he's like, it takes a while to get, you know, to the 5 or 6 followers, and then, you know, it doesn't seem as impressive. But if you keep using Mojo, when you start the fight already with, you know, him ramped up with 5 charges, with 4 charges, he can shut the lights out extremely quickly. I also like that we see more and more champions either immune to nullify, or there are nodes that, you know, prevent nullification. But he doesn't necessarily nullify. His way of getting rid of buffs effectively bypasses every other node and ability. Because there is nothing in any node, in any ability description really, about buffs expiring super quick. And that's how he gets rid of them. Just, you know, reduces their duration by like 90% or something. And that is a very nice way how to get past a lot of pesky abilities. On top of that, he's very sustainable. He does take a lot of chip damage, but his regeneration gets more and more potent the more health you have lost. So it's always very easy to sustain him at like 20 to 50% health, because at that point the regen's basically the most active. And yeah, I do think that Mojo is underrated offensively. Like the fact that he kind of nullifies, not really nullifying. I like the fact that a lot of his damage is coming from passive degeneration that pretty much nobody is really immune to. And on top of all of that, there have been a bunch of nodes recently where I have managed to exploit the downside of a node for like good positive reasons. Like we have the nodes like, I think, Combat Deja Vu, where you trigger that unblockable on purpose on the opponent because it's a buff, and then you reduce the unblockable's duration, and as you hit them with second, third, fourth light attack, they trigger these unblockables and they get turned into degens immediately. They feed the Mystic Dispersion and you just get a lot more potent offensive power. And there are more than those Combat Deja Vu nodes. There are plenty more. Like there's a node where they gain some sort of buff every time you knock them down, and then there's a node they gain some sort of buff every time you, I don't know, parry them or something. And he can benefit from them. extremely well. And in his base kit, he also has that built-in placing buffs on the opponent to feed your own Mystic Dispersion. So I think Mojo is definitely a very potent attacker, and I'm placing in spot number 8. Spot number 7 at the moment, I will be putting in Hood. Now, there are a couple of problems with Hood. Like I mentioned, I don't think it's a very brilliant idea that his bullets are persistent charges. There have been definitely quests and times where I'm really annoyed by simply not having access to enough bullets. And then there is the bug where often you need to dash back twice to trigger that timer to, you know, go invisible. Similarly, like with crossbones as well. But Hood is, in my opinion, one of the definitions of kind of like stable, reliable Mystic champion right now. He has a bit of power control that's not overly potent, but it's still quite good. We have 25 to 45% chance to steal 10% of the opponent's power with your like bullet attacks whilst you're invisible. Then on top of that, your level 2 have Fate Seal. That's extremely reliable and can get rid of all the opponent's buffs, and then you can stagger. So there's a ton of buff control. There's some phasing abilities that are definitely also quite neat. Also that, you know, additional way of dealing extra damage with detonating the bullets. I think he's a very solid kind of like balanced top tier Mystic champion that's not overpowered, that's not underpowered, that has got, you know, the fight in him just quite right. And then obviously there are the benefits of him synergizing with King Groot and Kingpin and Mr. Negative and Null even apparently, didn't even know that one, and so on, so forth, obviously. Ghost Trinity as well. So he's a champion that often finds his way to our teams as is, and it's just so much better now that he can actually put in solid amount of work. So I'm putting in Hood in number 7th place. I have him at rank 3 and absolutely zero regrets about that. Spot number 6. Spot number 6, some people probably will be upset that she's not anywhere higher, but that's going to be Scarlet Witch Sigil. Spot number 6 is Scarlet Witch Sigil. She's one of the more exciting Mystic champions. I'm definitely going to tell you that. I do think she has a ton of unique utility, and there is a very good potential that she might even raise to higher ranks at some point in the future. It's just that at this point, I didn't even know. Maybe in spot 5, I could have squeezed her in, but definitely not past that, because those Mystic powerhouses are just impossible to deny. Some of my favorite things about Scarlet Witch Sigil is that on heavy attacks, you can reliably gain a powerful power gain buff. I absolutely love that. I love the fact that you can nullify on parries. So often you can just, you know, block and parry to get rid of any pesky buffs before you won't even start attacking the opponents. And then obviously the entire buff system and prowesses and, you know, tons of damage over time effects. She's a very, very enjoyable champion. Definitely a champion that you want to have Mystic Dispersion with in order to use her to her fullest potential. I don't think her SIG ability is all that needed. It's nice to have, it's helpful, but it's not that needed. But again, there is obvious downside of you making your opponents stronger, because you give buffs to yourself and your opponents. And some of them you really don't care about. Some of them you are just happy to be able to give opponent a buff, to nullify, to trigger Mystic Dispersion about. But when you make opponent unblockable at the wrong time, you know, that can kind of mess you up. And it definitely does. You know, I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't. When have been using her in like 7.3 or some Kaviki or something like that, I have gotten hit in the face because of that ability in past. And it's, I think, pointless to pretend that you never do. Sometimes it happens. But it doesn't happen as much as a lot of people think, and you often kind of like survive it, and you have taken some damage, but you still can finish off the fight. And you can definitely reduce the possibility of that happening by managing the way you approach the fight when you're preparing to parry, when you're preparing to kind of like evade and things like that. And then obviously still giving opponent 120% special attack damage might not be the best idea in every scenario either. but you just need to know exactly what you're doing with Scarlet Witch Sigil and how crazy you want to play her. Because you can play her with 1 or 2 instability charges or 3 instability charges, you know, at which point you would have relatively moderate buff gain on both champions and you would kind of be taking it steady and slow. Or you can put her up to 4, 5, and 6 instability charges, in which case everybody gets all the buffs all the time, and it's just crazy amounts of fun. I like that. I like that a lot about the champion. I use her a lot, and I think Scarlet Witch Sigil is awesome. Right. Moving on from that, spot number 5. Spot number 5 currently, I am going to be giving to... Who can guess? No, Sorcerer Supreme. Maybe I should have swapped it with Scarlet Witch Sigil, but I think for now, just the sheer amount of reliability, the stability she brings to the fight, I think is extremely important. That, you know, regeneration on top of your, I don't know, spamming level 1s, being able to nullify everything, it's so golden. She might not be the fastest champion to get where you're trying to go. She might take her time, even in the matchups where, you know, there's plenty of buffs. But she's going to get you there. And she's kind of like the almost opposite of Scarlet Witch Sigil, where, you know, there's big numbers, tons of debuffs, lots of really kind of like flashy things happening. With Sorcerer Supreme, you get a complete opposite feeling. You get like a feeling that you're in 100% control of the fight. You're hiding behind your block. You're taking all the hits in a block on purpose and special attacks just to biding your moment, activating your special attacks, dropping your level 3s, 2s, 1s, whatever, nullifying everything. And, you know, you have a completely different approach. That you're not rushing. You have a very controlled fight. And that is super useful. Now, obviously, like many champions, like Scarlet Witch Sigil, Sorcerer Supreme definitely does not like to be used with Liquid Courage, Double Edge, and most importantly, Recoil, because you do end up using a lot of special attacks. One of the less recoil-friendly champions, I'd say. She does have some awesome energy resistance. Obviously, she's one of the Mystic champions. She's probably the best Mystic champion with access to slow, with very good, reliable access to slow. It's also worth noting here because that debuff is still extremely important. And a very, very powerful champion that does not necessarily need to be awakened to be absolutely amazing. Obviously gets even better if she's awakened. And the blue Smurf is good. It's just about that. She's kind of like a standard seal of approval of good champion. Not OP. Very reliable, not the fastest, but will get the job done. You will feel very in control doing the job. Spot number 4. Spot number 4. Diablo. Now, Diablo is many people's favorite at the moment. People were giving me a harsh time putting in Diablo in like 5th best buff this year, I think. So I'm sure that there are going to be people screaming at me for putting Diablo in the 4th place here as well. I love Diablo. I don't know. I don't understand why people think I don't. I really think he's quite awesome. I genuinely do. I think whether you run him with or without suicides, with or without Mystic Dispersion, there's a lot of benefit from using him. And he's definitely an awesome champion that can put a lot of control on the fight, a lot of regeneration abilities. Can let you regenerate a portion of energy damage that you take. You know, you regenerate every time you use special attacks, and you take no poison damage. And then with Liquid Courage Double Edge, you can heal a ton, and he's one of the most sustainable champions in the game. On top of that, he has some insane poison damage, and you know, there's absolutely a ton of things to love about this champion. Now, couple of downsides that people always like, you know, absolutely 100% tend to ignore. As amazing Diablo is, one, besides poison damage, he doesn't have very potent damage mechanic in him, and poison immunity is pretty much the most common immunity in the game. So when I'm using Diablo quite frequently I find that opponents, like obviously poison immune, and that's one of the reasons why, you know, I'm kind of scaling him back a bit. Now, the top 3 champions, and most of the champions actually below the top 3, pretty much everybody in this top 10 don't have that explicit weakness. And it doesn't work the same for all the champions. For instance, Nick Fury damage is significantly reliant to bleed, yes, but in real Nick Fury form, even if opponents bleed immune, you still deliver a ton of damage. Diablo can't quite accomplish that. He is reliant on poison damage. That is a fact. That's not a huge downside, but it is something that we need to recognize. And the second thing is, obviously, with as spammy as Diablo can be, there's for a Mystic champion no power control, which in itself, again, isn't a downside. I just think everything put together, Diablo is great. Diablo is amazing. One of the most sustainable champions in the game. I love using Diablo, but this is where I'm going to put him. And that is where he's going to stay for me. Because every single champion above him have very good reasons for being there. And I don't want anybody to say that I'm like not liking Diablo and hating Diablo. No, I think he's amazing. I use him a lot. But this is where I see the guy. This is where I genuinely see the guy. With the fact that you need to be able to, you know, finish your combos with the medium or spam your heavy attacks. You need to be able to access all the special attacks, and the opponent can't be poisoning in. And he's more situational than people like to admit. When he works, though, when he has his good matchups, he's definitely insanely awesome. There is, you know, few better feelings in running Mastery setup that had Liquid Courage, Double Edge, and full-on Mystic Dispersion, and just let it rip with Diablo. It's definitely amazing. Great buff, 100%. Spot number 3 is going to go to Black Widow Clairvoyant. And I actually see Black Widow Clairvoyant similar level as Diablo. I just prefer Black Widow Clairvoyant due to the fact that she can have access to more immunities. She still can have access to the same poison debuff, but as well as bleed and incinerate debuffs. And yes, you don't deal as much poison damage, but most of the time it's just important that you have that debuff active. And then obviously immunity is more different debuffs. She is an absolute utility machine. You can play her with or without Mystic Dispersion. You can play her with or without Liquid Courage Double Edge. And for me personally, she has been one of the most effective Mystic champions, for instance, exploring Act 7. Because, again, either way, I can rely on her being able to put in work. If I'm not running Mystic Dispersion, I'm going to be bringing in Black Widow Clairvoyant and if I'm not running Liquid Courage Double Edge, I'm going to be bringing in Black Widow Clairvoyant and Dr. Doom, for instance, if I need 2 Mystic champions. If I am running Liquid Courage Double Edge, I'm going to be bringing in Black Widow Clairvoyant and Diablo. But in both of these cases, I'm bringing in Black Widow Clairvoyant. And she has just undeniably put in a ton of work in pretty much every single game mode. There have been paths in Map 7 where she is by far the best option. There have been fights in Alliance 1 where she's by far the best option. She has done a ton in Act 7 exploration and pretty much everywhere all across the game. I think it's impossible to deny how great Black Widow Clairvoyant is at this point. The only thing I'd really like to change about the character is that stupid signature ability that's borderline useless. But that's about it. Besides her sig being useless, I think she's just amazing. Pretty much everything about her. I like that she's quirky. I like that you need to know what you're doing. I like that you have to have a plan. I love the fact that you can have either damage or heal or power control on your specials. Just great. Definitely great. But you guys are saying, wait a minute, Black Widow Clairvoyant always has been kind of de facto number 2 Mystic in the game, hasn't she? Well, yes, she has. For most. And she still is. Now, the next pick is going to be acquired taste. The fact of the matter is, it's very hard to play Tiger, or it's at least moderately hard to play Tiger well. I'm still in the process of getting fully accustomed to her, but I have finally taken that leap of faith myself a while back as well, where I am putting in more practice because I just could not deny how good Tiger is. Tiger's one of those champions that approaches fights outside the box, and she gets the job done. I got tired of seeing all the incredible solos and just insane, super impressive fights with Tigra, thinking it's like, oh yeah, that's cool, but I'm gonna do something else. I wanted to do things with Tigra because she's that potent. She takes hard fights and she makes them straightforward. There is obviously a lot of skill gap in between, let's say, Diablo or Black Widow Clairvoyant and Tigra. Tigra is one of the harder champions, in my opinion, to play really well. To a point where you kind of want to have experience in pretty much every single matchup that you're going to use Tigra, just to know the spacing, just to know whether you're going to have enough time to charge that heavy attack. Because she does have, you know, very unique playstyle. But the amount of problem fights that she can do easily, and many other champions struggle with, you know, it's just increasing over time. And the more trickier fights we encounter, the more Tiger's value rises, in my opinion. And I think this is slowly turning into one of those similar situations with Ghost or Quake. And I'm not going to say she's ever going to be as dominant or as popular as Ghost or Quake. But I will say that there will be two groups of people that play Contest of Champions. One of those groups will say that Tiger is overrated, or that they're too lazy to learn her, and, you know, they're going to struggle through the content their own way. And the other group is just going to use Tiger. And that has always been the case with the game, where a lot of hate towards Ghost and Quake came from the envy or dissatisfaction that you cannot either have or play that champion. Like, I remember a lot of nasty negative comments where, oh, of course the content's easy with your Ghost, or, yeah, well, try doing it if you're not quaking it, kind of thing. And I think we are moving in the direction of where there's going to be the same group of people or similar group of people saying like, well, of course, if you use Tiger, it's going to be easy, try using something else. I think that is where we are approaching with Tigra, and incidentally with Kitty Pryde as well. I think both of those champions have very high skill gap, will be able to do incredible things, will not necessarily be as powerful as Quake and Ghost were at their prime, but will make similar of a distinction in between player groups, where there are people who do put in the work and practice and learn, and there will be people who are upset at those who did. So Tiger is going second place. There we are. And the first one is just undeniable. The man is just overpowered. Like, there's just ridiculous. Like, the more I think about existence of Dr. Doom in this game, the stupider it all gets. Because, you know, he's kind of like the favorite child of the family that got all the family's heirlooms and good genetics and like good armor, good attack, good utility, good power control, everything. Built like a tank. Like, take out his like base stats, you know. Base attack 4,391, you know, and this check out base attack on Diablo, for instance, 3,000 something. HP, I think, is relatively unimpressive, but so check out, you know. So we checked out attack. Let's show crit damage and crit rate 517, 585. Crit damage 839. Okay, he doesn't crit a lot, but he does have insane crit. Armor rating 2,000 something. Diablo 359. What the hell is up with that armor rating? Block proficiency 3,500. Energy resist 550. Block proficiency 4,800. And then on the bottom you still have one of the most insane critical resistance in the game, block penetration, and obviously all the plethora of abilities that are just stupid. I mean, this is closest you can come to making a broken champion that does not completely make the game imbalanced. You know, but he has clearly gotten preferential treatment. like, he's a tank. He can, you know, hit super hard. He has tons of utility, and he's immune to this, and he does this, and it's, you know, all I'm saying, it's very easy to see that this guy was somebody's favorite, and somebody fought really hard to allow all of the OP broken shit in the game in its current phase. Just Doom. I don't think we're gonna see a Mystic Champion to kick him off his throne for a while. Yes, he's not the greatest with Suicide Masteries. Yes, obviously him has his inherent weaknesses because he's a Mystic Champion, stuff like that. But in general, it's like Doom. Like, if you need a Mystic Champion, you close your eyes. If you think of a Mystic Champion, first thing that comes to mind, Dr. Doom. By default, you read a node, you know, use a Mystic Champion. By default, you're going to go and immediately add Dr. Doom to your team. It's just that iconic for the class. The best. Pretty much everything a good Mystic Champion should be and more. Here we are. That is my Mystic top 10. So again, just to quickly go over it all. Spot number 10, Symbiote Supreme. Spot number 9, Dragonman. Spot number 8, Mojo. Spot number 7, Hood. Spot number 6, Scarlet Witch Sigil. Spot number 5, Sorcerer Supreme. Spot number 4, Diablo. Spot number 3, Black Widow Clairvoyant. Spot number 2, Tigra. Spot number 1, Dr. Doom. And here we are. Now we're going to be off tomorrow with the tech class. Yes, tech class is the next one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'm going to see you guys soon. Laters. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about